Alright guys, so in this video we're going to be converting a couple class-based components to functional because they no longer have state, so they don't need to be classes. Alright, now ultimately by the end of this project we're going to have all functional components because with the hooks that have been introduced to React, we can have state within functional components. But traditionally, this is how it went. You would have stateless functional components, and then you'd have class-based where you needed to use state or lifecycle methods. And I'll go over lifecycle in a little bit. So let's take our user item here. We're going to refactor it a little bit. So first of all, it's not going to be a class anymore. So we could do function user item. We don't need extends component. So we could do it like this and then have a return. I like to use arrow functions. So instead of doing that, I'm going to use const user item. And then we just put an equal sign here and then an arrow function here. Now, since this is now a function, we don't need a render, right? We just need the return. So this render ends right here with this purple, and this is what's great about the bracket pair colorizer, but we can just get rid of that and get rid of the render, and now we just have our function. So I'm going to save that. We no longer need this component, so that should work. Let's check it out. Cannot read props of undefined. Okay, so this is something that I need to mention. Now that we're not using class, we don't use the this keyword. Props are now going to be passed in here, and then we can simply say props.user. So let's save that, and now it works. So you can see we've actually cut out a bit of code here, and it looks cleaner, which is why I prefer now to use functional components all the time using hooks. I think it's a bit cleaner. Okay, but again, if you want to use classes, then that's absolutely fine. So let's do the same thing with our navbar. And then another thing we need to do is come back here, because since we do have a user prop, we need to add a prop type for it. Okay, but we'll do that in a second. So let's go to our navbar, and there's some additional things we're going to have to do here because we are using default props and prop types, which right now are inside the class. So I'll show you how to do this. We're going to first change this to a function. So we no longer need extends component. We'll just say const navbar, and we'll go like that. And then we have our props. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is take the default props and stat and prop types. I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to put it below the function. Okay, and then instead of putting static, we're just going to put the name of the actual component, which in this case is navbar. Okay, and then we're going to say navbar dot prop types. So this is how we do it with a functional component. And of course, we no longer need render, we just need the return, so we can get rid of that. And if I save this, it's not going to work because we still have this, so we'll get rid of this. Get rid of it here as well, and let's save that and go back, and everything's fine. Now we get this warning over here. It just says component is defined but never used. That's because we still have component defined up here, but we didn't use it. Now we can refactor this a little more. If you remember how we destructured in the user item, where we basically took this stuff out of props.user, instead of doing that, we could actually destructure this stuff up here. So we can take out user from props, and then if we want to take the specific items from user, we can just do a colon, and then we can put this stuff in here. So I'll grab that and put that in there, and then we should be able to let's see what I do wrong here. Oh, this needs to be, since this is destructuring, we need to have curly braces there as well. All right, so that cleans it up a little more, less lines of code, it still works. And if we go back into our navbar, we can kind of do the same thing. We have props.icon and props.title, so we can go ahead and destructure by using curly braces, and we can pull out icon and title, and then we can just use here icon and title like that. Okay, so I'll save that, and there we go. So now we have a functional component for navbar and user item. Now we do have the user prop being passed in here, so we should add that to prop types. So I'm going to import prop types, and then down at the bottom here we'll say user item dot prop types. Now the user prop that's being passed in here is an object, so we're going to say user, and we need to set it to prop types object, and it is required. Now with the ES7 React Redux snippets extension, I can simply do PT for prop types, O for object, and R for required, and enter. And it's going to type this out for me. If I wanted an array, I could do PTA R to make it required. If I didn't want it required, I could just do PTA. So this saves us some time because you can have components that have a lot of prop types. So let's just do PTOR, and that should be all set. So if we check that out, good, no console errors, and everything is fine. And we've cleaned up our code a bit. All right, so in the next video, I want to address the user state, because right now we just have some hard-coded users in our users component. Now this could be okay, keeping it in the users component in certain situations. However, we're going to have other components that need to interact with the users, such as the search bar or the search component. So what we want to do is move our users to the top level app component. Okay, because we're not using context, we're not using Redux or anything like that, at least yet. So in that case, I think it's best to move everything to the main app component so that we have a centralized place for our state and also any functions that manipulate the state. And we'll also go ahead and fetch it from GitHub rather than having it hard-coded. So that's what we're going to get into in the next video.